This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
Coffee-fueled stories. Hello. It's me, Michelle, your pocket DJ and host of Coffee-Fueled Stories, a show where storytelling and coffee hang out. This week's special guest is Lara Tupper. Hello, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Michelle. It's lovely to meet you and be here. I'm excited.
We have a lot of things to talk about because you do a lot of different things. You have several different types of books, and we are going to discuss main character energy, but it's not main as in your main character, it's main as in the state. Mm-hmm. Then you also have amphibians, and then you also do writing workshops. So I'd love to talk about your writing workshops.
Sure. Yeah. I'd love to talk about all of the above. So
all right. Well, let's dive in. Let's talk about main character energy, because that's an awesome charity book that you and Paul Cairo. So shout out to Paul Cairo because he connected us. You guys are Mainers.
That's right. Yeah, I grew up in Boothbay, Maine, and I live in the beautiful Berkshires of Western Mass now. But Maine is, in my heart. It's there's no getting away from it, for better or for worse. I, like many young people growing up in a small rural place, I could not wait to leave. I was thinking, where are the concert halls? Where's the musical theater? I wanted to be around a bustling, busy place with lots of artists, and that was not the town where I grew up. But it's always stayed with me. It comes up a lot in my writing, in lots of different ways. And main character energy was the brainchild of Sarah Park, the editor, who, after the terrible mass shooting in Lewiston, Auburn in October of 2023, wanted to do something to put Maine voices together and talk about resilience and honor the victims there in Lewiston, Auburn. So I jumped on board. I submitted a story and was very honored that she picked it. And the theme, if you can call it one, was resilience. She wanted to highlight the character of Mainers and the resilience in overcoming hard times. And it touched me deeply. I wanted to be a part of it. So I was so grateful that I was able to. I will call myself a Mainer always, no matter where I live. Some people in the anthology live there still. Some attended school there and left for other places, but everybody in the anthology has some connection in some way. And it comes through in the various pieces. There's one poem, there's fiction, there's nonfiction, creative nonfiction in there. So I appreciate the variety. There's some humor, there's a lot of pathos. And yeah, I'm just grateful that Sarah Park put it together and that Frank Ard from Rogue Owl Press took it on. So yeah, it's just been lovely to be a part of it. We have a lot of great response in Maine, especially my home paper, the Boothbay Register, wrote a big article about it, which was lovely. And my hometown bookstore, Sherman's Bookstore in Boothbay Harbor, Maine, is carrying it among many other places. So it's been lovely to see a lot of support in Maine in particular.
Thank you. And it was truly touching to read it, because I'm not familiar with Maine other than what I read from, various stories and Stephen King and things of that nature, right? That's my familiarity with Maine, if you will. But what I loved was that Maine, the state of Maine, and the way that people feel was a character in it of itself in the book. And you just felt that. There was something so cool about that, the anthology, And I literally have in my notes Maine as a character, love it. And then I have like this little smiley face with little spiky hair because that's kind of that's me.
That makes
So
sense.
the stories kind of take you around the state. Everybody just transported me into Maine, into these stories.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's wonderful to hear. And yeah, I think that that's due to Sarah Park's editorial skills. I think she chose pieces that really highlighted different areas. And I think, I'm from Mid-Coast Maine, Booth Bay Harbor, and that's area that scene gets a lot of attention, the lobsters and the beautiful coastline and all of that, but that's a small percentage of what Maine is geographically and socioeconomic wise. It's so I love that, as you said, so many different pieces are represented. Shannon Bowring is a writer who's included in the anthology too, and she has a wonderful novel out called The Road to Dalton. It's part of a trilogy, and that's all about upstate Maine. It's about the part of the state that I know very little about as a Mainer who'd lived there all my life. So it's far from the sea. In her novel, I love that characters are suspicious of fish because it's had to travel so far from the coast to get to where they are. So yeah, I learned a lot about my home state by reading the anthology as well. So and I should mention that all of the proceeds from this book go to charity. They go to support Everytown for Gun Safety, which is an organization I have a lot of respect for in terms of trying to put more laws into action in terms of gun control. So it's lovely that they put all this together and all proceeds go to charity, which I think is kind of rare for an anthology of this kind. So props to Rogue Owl Press for making that happen too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like you said, it goes to the resiliency. It shows how everyone, brought together in such a way, and that it was done it was a charity event. Again, I felt like I got to know Mainers a little bit better through this book, and it was really cool.
Yeah, it's I'm going back at the end of the month to Booth Bay for a performance, and I can't wait. It's the kind of place where if I'm away too long, it's as though something is not quite right in my system. I miss the sea. I'm in a landlocked part of the state right now, and yeah, there's something about being close to the ocean and, of course, being around, places that are very familiar to me in my hometown. And I think, like many people with age, I appreciate the place where I grew up and appreciate the many people that helped me thrive as a young person there. Yeah, I have less angst about the state now as an older person, but
totally.
Yeah.
Speaking of lobster. Is that something like in my mind, I think lobster rolls, and I think Maine and the best lobster rolls. Like you just don't get anything like that here.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I feel like I'm a little bit of a seafood snob. If it's not from Maine, it's not worth trying. But yeah, I was really spoiled as a kid. My parents had clients who would sometimes exchange work for lobster. So we'd come home sometimes and there would be bags of live lobsters left on our porches as payment, and which was wonderful. But I have vivid memories of live lobsters like crawling on the kitchen counter awaiting their death. And my father saying, well, if you stroke the part between the antennas of the lobster, it lulls them into this hypnosis where they can't feel any pain, which I think is a lie. But as a little kid, I was like, oh, okay, it's all right to eat the lobster because they feel no pain because my father knows the magic trick. So yeah, so
that is a great story.
Yeah, it's a testament to my father's kindness or charm or both. But
I love that.
yeah, so I learned how to, break open lobsters and eat them correctly. Father had a very strict way you're supposed to eat them. It's supposed to crack open the shells and the claws and all of that. So yeah, I did that from a young age. I went to high school with a lot of families who, or children of families who came from a long line of fishermen. And so a lot of my peers still are in the lobstering trade. It less and less, unfortunately, now. But when I first finished high school, a lot of them started lobstering right away, and so it was just kind of ingrained. It was a working waterfront where I grew up at the time. Now Booth Bay is changing a little bit. It's becoming less of a working waterfront, and there's a lot of controversy about that, as you know, condos come in and parts of the waterfront are being built up. But my vivid memory in late 1970s, early 80s is of, you know, lots of
Have you noticed how Coffee Fueled Stories doesn't have any ads? That's because I work tirelessly to keep this show alive. After 3 years on my own, I've decided I need to ask for your help. I've never asked anyone to subscribe. I've never asked anyone to leave a review. I've never asked anyone to rate the show. And I've never asked anyone to pay to listen. There are a few ways you can help support the show. I've created a Patreon page, Coffee Fueled Stories, and a subscription section on my podcast website. It's simple to support and help me keep my dream alive. Just click the link in the show notes to set up your paid subscription option. It's that easy. Thank you for your support.
fishing vessels coming into the harbor and lots of lobster boats. And I knew a lot of the lobstermen in town, and my parents did. And I think there's this romantic sense I have of the seafood being from, you know, via the hands of people that I knew and went to school with and their families, and rich history. And there's you know, a lot that I appreciate from that time. I also, growing up, felt that there's got to be more. And I think I referenced this earlier, you know, there's got to be access to more art. There's got to be places where I'm not the only kid obsessed with musical theater. Like there has to be. I hadn't quite found my people growing up, and so a lot of my writing is about that tension. You know, the feeling very connected to the place and many of the people, and yet feeling that I didn't quite fit in, and that I would find my place somewhere else. So, which I think is a very universal theme, but the backdrop seems to be in a lot of my fiction. Maine, I can't seem to get away from it, no matter what.
That makes sense. So then you'll appreciate where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
So I literally have on here, because your story, Glass, the music you chose. So these are some of my notes. The music was nostalgic. I, however, do love Blondie and Pat Benatar.
Yeah.
As opposed to the reference that was Stevie Nicks.
Oh yeah.
The Eagles. I grew up on the Eagles as well.
Yeah.
But the part that had me laughing was the Solid Gold Dancers.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I grew up watching that too.
Oh yeah. So
I
you
wanted to be
know.
one too.
Oh wow. Wow.
But I don't dance.
I don't meet many people who admit to wanting to be a solid gold dancer. So
I loved it. I thought it was awesome. Again, it was a way to get out of that small town,
Yeah.
right? If you watch them and you're like, they had great moves, they had great style, right? And I used to roller skates.
Oh.
So there was something about that disco, the skates, that music, that time frame. There was something. I was a child, but I felt the hedonistic vibe, if you will, but from a childhood perspective, where you let it out. You just had fun. And like the 70s just kind of had that feel to it, where you were flashy and you could be flashy, and that was okay.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful to hear, because yeah, there is the flash and the sequins and the glamour of that time really appealed to me. Growing up in a place where, the LL Bean is, kind of practical, pragmatic clothing is the norm. You don't see a lot of sequins in downtown Booth Bay. And I was, very attracted to all of this shine and glitter, and think Solid Gold definitely represented that for me. Yeah, my mom is a fabulous dancer, and she was adamant that I start at a very young age. So I did. So pieces of that story are autobiographical, although the much of it isn't. And she, encouraged me. I wouldn't say pushed me, but encouraged me to start ballet. I think I was 5 or so, and like the character in Glass, I was terrible. I was really bad. I wanted to be good. I wanted, to be on solid gold. I wanted to be a rock cat. I wanted to be those glamorous figures, but I couldn't remember the steps, the sequence of the steps, and that is kind of crucial for for a dancer. That's a piece I couldn't wrap my head around. And I think I had so much anxiety around it that I sort of panicked every time that came up. So when I started taking lessons at the local YMCA, and you had to do across the floor, and you had to remember not anything very complicated, but a sequence of, say, 5 steps, I just panicked, and I just felt so disappointed in myself, and I was disappointing my mother, who had such great hopes for me as a dancer. And so yeah, I didn't quite follow in her footsteps, no pun intended, but I always loved the idea of being a dancer, and I have such great respect for the discipline and the athleticism and the beauty of dance now. I'm kind of obsessed with watching So You Think You Can Dance and all those dance competition shows. It's beyond me how someone can physically and mentally do that. So I have great respect.
Totally. I love watching, I know it's going to sound cheesy, but I love watching dance movies.
Oh yeah.
My mom did ballet when she was younger, so there's kind of a correlation. My mom wanted me to do ballet, and I said no. I wanted to do tap dancing, and she said no, and so I did neither, because
Oh.
we couldn't find a compromise. Now, and instead of, she was stubborn and so was I, and instead of giving in, it could have been like, okay, well, you do ballet 2 times a week, and you do tap 1 time. If she had just given me that one day, I would have been like, okay, I'll do ballet, but I didn't get any. And so I was like, no, I was like, you're not giving me anything. I'm not giving you anything. So I did nothing. So, but I love musical theater. I wish I would have, I'm sucker for musicals. You want to make me happy? Put on a musical soundtrack, and I will just sing and dance away at the top of my lungs. I'll have to send you some silly videos. Like
Oh,
I've seen
please.
Wicked like several times, and
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
sing Defy Gravity at the top of my lungs, and I can't hold a tune, but I don't care because it makes me happy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real high for me sitting in the audience and watching a musical production. I lived in New York for a decade, and was really lucky to have friends who worked behind the scenes on Broadway. I knew someone who was a dresser for Patti LuPone and other big Broadway stars. He would get me last minute tickets to kind of, fill in the empty seats tickets.
Yeah.
Because of him, I was able to see so much free, wonderful theater in New York on Broadway. Pretty much anything, from Mary Poppins to the revival of A Chorus Line, I would just be bawling. Just, it didn't take anything for me to just burst into tears, just so moved by I mean, no matter what it is, no matter what the storyline is, the skill of acting, singing, dancing at the same time, it's incredible.
Yeah, respect, total respect. Because same thing, I'm like, I couldn't imagine trying to do that. Like, I wish I could, but I can't. So I massively respect anybody who can do that.
I've tried at various times I did a lot of musical theater in high school and college, and I worked on a cruise ship as an entertainer for a while when I was in my
Yes,
early 20s.
I
which,
wanted to talk about that. I've got that
well,
in my notes, singing in
yeah.
Huntons overseas.
Yeah, I sang as a lounge singer for many years, in a duo overseas in Thailand, Japan, China, the United Arab Emirates. But before that, what led me to that strange career was another strange career, which was, yeah, entertainer on a cruise ship. And there I was hired as singer slash dancer, not dancer slash singer, thank goodness. But this was important where the where this which word came first. But you know, I could fake it after years and years of lessons. I could fake it. I could, you know, look like a dancer, but I certainly wasn't. They always put me in the back, you know, doing very little. Except one time, someone got sick and they had to put me in the front row, and it was a can routine. So lots of kicks, da, 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 lots of kicking and ducking and kicking and ducking. And I had an afternoon to learn the routine. And I remember the dance captain, you know, rehearsing with me in a back room on the ship, and she knew I didn't have it, and I knew I didn't have it. And we were just like, well, let's try it. So I did it. I was in the front row, the can routine. I'm trying to remember. And there was this one move where you duck and someone swings their leg over your head. And I didn't duck at the right time. And the dancer next to me kicked me in the head.
Oh no.
And I blacked out. And I collapsed on stage in front of the audience on the cruise ship, who's there to, you know, it's supposed to be festive, fun times, and they're watching this person collapse. I remember like coming to, crawling off the stage, and they took me to the infirmary, and I had this terrible black eye for a week, 10 days or something. And I looked so scary, they wouldn't let me leave my cabin. I don't think any of this would be okay now. I don't think any of this would happen. This was 1996, but it was terrifying. So, you know, that was the height of my dance career. That was
Sarah.
getting
God.
kicked in the head, can routine. So no, I don't call myself a dancer anymore. That was cruise ship days. But
Oh my gosh.
kind of ship where they had us, we were hired, you know, on paper to sing and dance, but once we got there, they had us do like shuffleboard tournaments and pool deck quizzes and aerobics. And so we were working 12, 13, 14-hour days every day doing activities, and then running to do our 2 shows every night for the audience. And it was, I mean, I was 22, so it was thrilling because we would wake up in a different place every day, and it was free travel. And apparently I didn't even care about getting kicked in the head by a can dancer. But yeah, it was thrilling to see the world. I was a kid from Maine who was finally seeing the world. We were in the Mediterranean in the summer and the Caribbean in the winter.
Oh,
and
wow.
do across the ocean crossing once a season. And you know, it was a great adventure. And I happened to be the only American on board. The rest were British. It was a British cruise line, which no longer exists. They were bought out by Carnival at one point. But it was that kind of ship. It was, you know, fun ship, families, activities every single minute. And I learned a lot about people skills and trying to get along with people in very tight quarters. You know, we had these cabins that were under the water line. We had a porthole, but it had to be covered because of safety. And so you're in this dark, dank cabin with strangers. And well, they were strangers at first. Thankfully, I got along with most of my cabin mates. And then we had the crew mess, which was not the food that the people on the cruise ship, the passengers, were eating. It was, you know, the next day or the day after that, it kind of trickled down in a different form to our crew mess. And it was rough. I think there was something wrong with the stabilizers for parts of the contracts that I had. I remember being in the dining hall and plates sliding off the table. And I remember being on stage, and we had this little silly car that was supposed to be like Greased Lightning. We were doing like this ripoff of Grease called Route 66, and we had this car on stage, and it was so rough. It came off its blocks at one point and started rolling towards the audience, and we all just had to clamp it down and make sure that it didn't go into the lounge and harmony one. So it was not a big budget operation. And this was, as I say, you know, almost how many years ago now? I can't do the math in my head.
I don't do numbers either.
Yeah. It was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, many years ago.
Yes, another time. So anyway, the lovely thing is I got a book out of it. I wrote about my adventures in a autobiographical novel called 1001 Nights, that is about that time on board. And then afterwards, when I was a lounge singer in hotels, I think as a 20-something, I thought this was my stepping stone to bigger and better things. Unfortunately, it just it kind of devolved. It was a lot of singing for expats who just wanted to hear Hotel California over and over and over again. It was we were like a jukebox, we would take a lot of requests and we would sing to backing tracks. It was two people, my then partner who played guitar and me singing to backing tracks. I learned 400 songs, and
Oh my gosh.
we worked 4 hours a night, 6 nights a week. But I was in Japan and China and Thailand, and for many years it was worth it to see these wonderful places and have these adventures and put up with the not so satisfying work life. But anyway, it's all in the book.
Yes.
All
Yes.
the grisly details are in the book. There are fictional elements of that book too. It's not straight memoir, but I knew after that time that I had stories to tell. And after I could no longer face it, and my then partner and I went separate ways, I went back to school and got my MFA in creative writing and tried to figure out how to tell these stories that I'd amassed and how to avoid not having to ever do the can again. So that's what led me to taking my writing life more seriously and turning to teaching as a career path. The entertaining went on the back burner. I really dove into study and then teaching. I taught at Rutgers in New Jersey for 10 years. Taught creative writing there, and that too was a wonderful education for the time that it lasted. But I became really burnt out after 10 years. I was living in New York City and commuting out there to New Brunswick, New Jersey, which was an hour and 45-minute commute. And I became a writing teacher who was not writing. I became good at giving the advice and advising the students, and I wasn't doing any of it myself. I was just obsessively grading papers, and I was an adjunct. Adjuncts are infamously underpaid and overworked. I just realized it only took me 10 years to figure it out, but after 10 years I realized, wow, I miss the creative sparks in my life. I wasn't really singing anymore. I was singing in a chorus, which was lovely, but that was it. Just realized I needed to do a complete 180 if I was going to feel anything like my old self again. So I quit that job at Rutgers. Everyone around me thought I was nuts. We were middle of a national recession, and teaching jobs were scarce, and I'd worked hard to get where I was, and everybody said, you can't quit. You can't do it. But I did. I quit, and I moved to the Berkshires, and I started volunteering at a yoga center. And I lived there for a year in a bunk bed, sublet my apartment in New York, and spent my days folding yoga blankets, having cushions around rooms for yoga classes. And I loved it. It was a gift to remember who I had been previously, and it was a gift to return to my body. I had spent so much time in my brain. I became an obsessive yoga practitioner, realized, oh, there's a lot of stuff in my life I haven't really been dealing with. I've just been pushing it down. And it was a wonderful tool for coming back to myself and coming back to a more creative life. I started singing again, and I started writing again, realized I could patch together a life, many hats, try to keep that creativity centered. So I did that. That was now 13 years ago that I moved to the Berkshires and that yoga center. That sort of brings me to where I am now. I stopped teaching and working there at the yoga center, and I started my own writing platform called Swift Ink Stories. And it is a writing platform. I am grateful. I said I live in the Berkshires, and there are a lot of creative people around where I live, a lot of writers in particular, and a lot of people who have stories to tell but haven't necessarily started the process. So I offer creative writing workshops, either libraries and community centers that are grant funded, or I work one-on-one with writers who are starting or in the middle of book length projects. So it's a lovely way to combine my passions, teaching and writing, with the local clientele here in the Berkshires. And we have a lot of people who come in the summer for the theater and the music. We're very close to Tanglewood and Shakespeare and Company. And so there's this influx of people who just live here for the summer. And that's a time when I find I'm really busy with private consultations, people who've been wanting to start a book or finish their book. So I'm small business owner, and it's been a challenge and a wonderful sense of freedom to be self-employed. It's ups and downs. It can be it can be wonderful to be the CEO and the CFO and the marketer, and as you know, I'm sure, Michelle, but sometimes that comes with challenges. Sometimes I wish I did have a staff of 50 I could I could just call upon to do my bidding, but that is not the case. But yeah, I've been thrilled to receive a lot of grants from local cultural councils and Massachusetts cultural councils, and the response has been really lovely. I think I think we're on the same page here, where everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. It's a cliche, but it's true.
Yes.
And I think it's half the battle is giving ourselves permission to tell it. So my goal, and I think I have a sense that we share this, is to make people feel comfortable enough to tell the story. And I think a lot of that has to do with compassion and listening, creating an atmosphere that is non-competitive, and creating an atmosphere where I'll certainly give feedback, but I want to pay attention first and foremost to the story that the writer wants to tell. It's not my story. It's not how I would write it. It's not my preference for tone or voice or structure. It's suggestions I will certainly offer to make a piece stronger, but I want to figure out, first of all, what is your intention? You being the writer that I'm working with, what is the project you envision? And then I try to help that client get there. So it's not how everybody works. I think in this field of writing, and I think in all creative fields, there can be this element of competition and elitism and snobbery about what constitutes real art. And I want nothing to do with that. I feel like everybody has a story to tell, and I love to work with people in particular who are just beginning to figure out what that story is. It's really exciting to help them do that. So yeah, that's the teaching hat that I wear now. Grateful to all my years at Rutgers University for kind of instilling the practice of teaching, but I love to do it my way now. So thanks for asking. That's what Swifting Stories is all about.
That's super cool. So storytelling is something. Speaking of which, Ghost Story is where your Hotel California story
Oh
is.
yeah,
So we will get to that. I would like to
okay.
talk about that one because that was
Sure.
very interesting how you wove or I should say, used the thread of the lyrics with
Yes.
the story.
Mm,
So Hotel California.
yeah.
I grew up listening to Hotel California
Yeah.
on repeat in the car on our road trips
Yep.
because that was the song. I've got a feeling you and I are about the same age.
Yep.
So, and then you said that you had to sing that so many times.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel so sorry for you.
I know. It was so interesting because I mentioned earlier, I worked many different countries, and wherever we ended up, Hotel California was the number one request. Hotel California and My Heart Will Go On by Celine Dion. That unfortunately, for some reason was a big, and I could not hit a lot of I had no right singing that song, but I gave it my best. But Hotel California, yeah, it was requested worldwide when I was in my lounge singer days, and I sang it. I must be thousands of times, at least 1,000 times in my life, and I still have no idea what it's about. I still have no idea, and I think that kind of spurred me to try to write a story about it. I liked the idea of stringing some of the lyrics together into a plot. So that's how the Mission Bell came about, and that's the story that you referenced. That's in the Ghost Story online. Paul Guernsey, the editor there, was kind enough to include it. To me, it's an incredibly creepy song,
Totally agree with you on that.
and the sort of
Beautifully creepy.
beautifully creepy. And yeah, I mean, I love that I don't quite understand it, and that I don't think I ever will. There's this sense of mystery about it, but I think, I was just so bored of singing it that I had all these scenarios in my head in various lounges in various places, and so it just congealed into this very strange story about someone who gets lost and stumbles upon a hotel. And but I have intentions to write an entire short story collection based on song lyrics, and I have a few of them done. I've written a short story about Copacabana by Barry Manilow. I'm a big Fanilow. I'm a big Barry Manilow fan. So I don't know if that makes you want to stop the interview right now, but
My really good friend Amy, shout out to Amy. This one's for you. She is president of the Barry Manilow fan club.
no.
She has seen him, I don't even know how many times. And so we tease each other
Wow.
in a good way. I love Adam Ant and she loves
Okay.
Barry Manilow. And
Yeah.
these are the men that were in our lives as we
Yeah.
were children,
Yeah.
as we were young girls turning into ladies.
Yeah.
And so I love and respect her love and your love for Barry Manilow.
Well, thank
100%.
you. I feel seen. So many people, that's the end of the conversation, and then
Nope.
I never hear from them again. But
Nope. Bring
um,
it, sing it. Let's do
yeah,
it.
I have great respect for him. So yeah, so I've started this short story collection, which I hope will see the light of day sometime. Story based on the lyrics to Copacabana, a story based on the lyrics to Happy Together. So happy together.
Yeah.
That I've never quite understood that song either. So anyway, I have a list going, and oh, and I did finish one, 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. That's done too. So anyway, that's my
Oh my
intention, to
God.
kind of combine
Can I be an
lyric.
arc? Can I be an arc reader for this book, please?
Sure,
Please.
sure. Yes, please. Well, that's motivation. Now I've got to get it finished. So
Oh my God, music. Okay, I love music. So you'll appreciate the story and I'll make it quick because I want this to be about you. Um, I punk rock. I loved punk rock. I like that is like it spoke to my soul at like 12 or 13 when I discovered it.
yeah.
To see American Idiot on stage,
Oh
third
yeah.
row, I cried because my little punk rock
Yeah.
heart was on stage singing
Yeah.
along, having I'm not lying.
Yeah.
I cried because it was my two favorite things on the planet, punk
Yeah.
rock and music theater in one, and my little brain just
Yeah.
exploded.
I love that.
Exploded.
I love that. I want to see that. I haven't seen it yet,
Oh,
but
so good.
so many
So good.
musicals, so little time. I
So
just
many.
I just saw Waitress, the Sarah Bareilles musical, for the first time in HD. It wasn't live, but I was floored by that. I'm listening to the soundtrack nonstop now. And so, yeah, I go through obsessive phases with musicals where I have to listen to them constantly. And yeah, I hear you. I think that's very well put, that I think I do see myself up there too. And I just, as said previously, I have so much deep respect for the talent that I'm witnessing up there.
Yeah.
It's incredible to be able to juggle all those things at once and perform in that way. So
Since we're talking about art and creativity, I see on your bookshelf there Off Island, and that's in
yeah,
reference to Paul Gauguin,
yes,
the
yeah.
painter.
So Off Island is a novel based on the life of Paul Gauguin. I went to an exhibit at the Met years and years ago when I was living in New York, and Gauguin was featured. But what I was fascinated by were letters that he had written to his wife Meta, to Gad Gauguin, who was back in Denmark when he was living in Tahiti. And he wrote these very explicit descriptions of affairs that he was having, like very explicit letters to his wife. And it was just, that was the germ for this novel. I began to think like what that was like for her, what it was like to be the wife of Paul Gauguin. So the story is really about her. It's told in multiple points of view, and there's a portion that takes place during Paul Gauguin's later years, and then there's a portion that takes place relatively modern day in Maine. So I was kind of weaving together these ideas of what it means to be an artist and what it means to be the person supporting the artist, and what enables an artist, and particularly historically male artists, what enables their creativity. And in this case, it was Mette Gad Gauguin being willing to stay at home with the 5 kids. And so I wanted to tell that story. And so I became obsessed with the life of Paul Gauguin, not so much his artwork, although of course I was interested in that, but reading as much as I possibly could about his life. And there was so little about her life, about Mette's life. So I just started to imagine and fictionalize. And I loved putting that novel together. It was very hard to get it out into the world. It was neither fish nor fowl. My agent at the time wanted it to be straight historical fiction, or I shouldn't say my agent, but the editors that she was sending it to wanted it to be in one box, and I wanted it to be in a few different boxes overlapping. So I was stubborn, and I didn't change it to please others. And as a result, it took a long time for it to come out, but I was thrilled when Encircle Publications in Maine finally put it out. Part of the novel is set on Monhegan Island, Maine. I imagine that Paul Gauguin went to this island off the coast of Maine but in addition to going to Tahiti. It's a convoluted plot that I won't get into here. But anyway, Gauguin ends up in Maine in my version of art history. And so it was thrilling to do a reading with the Monhegan Library. I got to go back to a lot of the places where the book was set in Maine, and it was just wonderful to have that connection. Unfortunately, it came out in 2020, and I had all of these wonderful in-person readings set up and had to cancel 90% of them. So a lot of them pivoted to online. That's what happened to many writers at that time. But I did do one event in Portland, Maine, at a wonderful bookstore called Print Bookstore. One of my mentors, Bill Rohrbach, was in conversation with me there, and we got to talk about the book. And so that was thrilling to sort of have a book release moment in Maine. So we're coming full circle, I guess, to landing back in Maine again. But thanks for asking about Off Island. It's a book that's really dear to my heart, and I still feel very passionately about the characters. And I understand that it's weird. It's a weird book, and it's not for everybody, and that's okay. I think at one time I would not have been okay with that. I want everyone to like it. I think I understand now that that's impossible, and it's actually preferable to find the people that are going to get the story that you're trying to tell rather than try to please everybody in the world. That's a lesson that's been hard one for me. I can't please everybody. What?
So I don't know if anybody has ever said this to you, but I would like to be the first if it hasn't been said to you. You're a punk rocker.
Am I? Oh my
You
God.
are. As you were talking about Off Island and your attitude about it, I literally wrote it down, punk rock, because you did it your way. You had people telling you, you had people coming at you, and you're like, no, damn it. I'm the artist. This is what I want.
Yeah.
And good for you for standing up, for knowing that your voice, and like you said, it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
But you didn't succumb. You didn't change.
Yeah.
And I applaud you for that. So thank you for being a punk rocker if nobody's ever said that to you.
No,
That's how you come across to me.
Thank you. I'm honored. Wow. Yeah, I didn't think as a Barry Manilow fan I could ever be a punk rocker, but I so thank you. Thanks, Michelle. I'm thrilled. That's the highest compliment. So thank you. Yeah.
Everybody has a story, and this is your story, and you didn't want to change your story.
Yeah.
So be punk rock, goddammit. I love getting to know you. So thank you for sharing your story. But I didn't get a
What?
chance to ask you about I call it writing juice. So some
Oh,
people prefer coffee, some people prefer tea. So
oh,
what is
yeah.
your preferred writing juice?
Thank you for asking. I have vanilla chai tea
Oh,
um,
yummy.
in
I love that mug.
my favorite little polka dot mug, and it's a tea that smells amazing and tastes so-so. But I'm it's I'm superstitious about it. As you say, like, oh, I gotta have this tea again because this is my writing tea. So part of me thinks I should mix it up, but I love the smell. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. What about you?
So I saved my second cup of coffee for you, so I wasn't going to be super hyped up. This is we like Trader Joe's medium
Okay.
roast. It's
Yeah,
nothing fancy, but it gets
yeah,
the job done. I try not to drink more than two cups is my preferred.
yeah,
But if I'm having a rough day, I might go for three.
yeah. I
Sometimes I have a lot of things to do and I need that third cup.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about coffee is it works. It
It,
really
it
it
does.
works, I found. So yeah,
It does.
I'm with you. Yeah, it's tea, coffee, good stuff to do while writing.
Absolutely. Thank
Yeah.
you for your time.
Yeah, thank
Is there
you.
anything you would like to let the listeners know about upcoming events that you've got going, books coming out, things of that nature, your Swift Ink workshops? Can anybody sign up for that?
Yeah, many of them are in person in Western Massachusetts. So if anyone happens to be listening in Western Massachusetts, please do come and sign up. Everything's on my website, laratupper.com, in terms of info and how you sign up. Those are all free. But I also do online workshops. I do one monthly called Pick Up the Pen, which is just a free writing, laid back hour of prompts, and I invite anybody to come on in. That's fee based, but if it's not affordable for someone, I'm happy to work with them. And I do workshops that are 5 week sessions for people who have work in progress. So if you're wanting some feedback in a group, I do that 3 times a year: winter, summer, winter, spring, fall. I have one coming up in May for it's a 5 week intensive. So all the information's on my website, and if people are interested in that, I have spaces left. That's really it. I'm grateful that you're doing the work you're doing, and such a great supporter of writers and stories. And thank you for doing what you do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Anyway, it's been truly enjoyable talking with you, sharing stories. Would you please do the honors of signing us off and saying my tagline of "Go forth and be magical"?
Go forth and be magical.